Hello, my name is Moira Hazlett and I'm one of the staff members in English at Queen's, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about studying English at Queen's and why you might do that. Many of you might be local and therefore you'll probably already know what Queen's looks like. And here in the slide we've got our wonderful historic Lanyon building. Here too, you can come back to, we've got some things, some statistics about why Queen's is world leading. So when you look at a world ranking, for example, the world ranking, certainly the QS world rankings, survey over 3,000 universities. So that gives some perspective that we're in the top 250 of over 3,000. I've been at Queen's since 1999. So I've been here quite some time, and I love being at Queen's. I love Belfast and it's a great place to bring up my family, but I especially love Queen's too because I feel here that staff have a great ethic of care towards students. So I think we get a really good balance here between being very dedicated to our research and writing our books and making our publications, but also there's really, really great commitment to looking after the students who come and study with us. So here since 1999, and Lanyon has been there from a long, long time before me. But since I've been here, we've seen massive changes in the infrastructure for the university too. And we've had these wonderful buildings. The one in the bottom left is our fabulous library, which is a really important place for an English student. And it's got great resources in terms of books, but it's also got fantastic online resources. So sometimes you'll be using the wonderful resources of this library, but you actually might be sitting in your kitchen or wherever. You can access them remotely as well. So it's a lovely building, a lovely place to study, but it's absolutely backed up with great other resources as well. And you'll get to know the other places too, all obviously much more recent than the historic Lanyon building, which was on the previous slide. But I'm not going to spend too long. That's me now in terms of Queen's more generally. I want to talk now a little bit about English in particular. And if you're already thinking about doing English, you're probably thinking that, well, I'll come and I'll read a lot of books. And that is a really important part of what we do. Literary studies in English is a major part of English at Queen's, but it's not the only part of English at Queen's. So I'll explain that to you as we move on. But just pausing for a second here, I've got some images here kind of represent the breadth of what we offer. So I've got a gentleman up in the top left who is probably from what we would call the early modern period or the Renaissance, reading a book. And then I have someone here who's reading a Kindle. And I suppose when I was choosing images to represent English, I wanted to give that kind of sense of historic range, partly because we teach historical literature. We teach books that were written in the Renaissance period and even earlier, but we also look at contemporary literature as well. So our curriculum covers that, but it's also giving you this sense that despite all the kind of influx of new technologies, reading for pleasure, reading books, reading text, reading hypertext, reading digital resources is still at the heart of us and what we do and what we enjoy and what we do. So some of the images here for enjoyment too. So I've got spot Marilyn Monroe reading. If you can peer very closely, she's reading Ulysses in what looks like an outdoor park, and she almost looks like she's wearing her bathing suit. And I love this image because as a student of English, you will be asked to read a lot and you will be given a lot of time in which to do that reading. But where you do that reading, and also to a great extent what you read, is largely your own choice as well. So that you might be on a sunny day, sitting outside reading, just as Marilyn Monroe. I don't know, I sometimes wonder if it's a posed photograph, but it's a wonderful picture anyway. The two ladies above Marilyn Monroe are two ladies photographed in the 1950s reading D.H. Lawrence's Lady Chatterley's Lover, a book which had been banned and had just been made public, publicly available. But as I say, literary studies is just one component of what we do in English at Queen's, because we also have a very strong cohort in creative writing. So creative writing is also part of English at Queen's. If you know nothing about English at Queen's, you might, except for one thing, the one thing might be that Seamus Heaney famously was both a student and also a tutor, a lecturer at Queen's. And we're very, very proud of that connection. But before Heaney, there was Helen Waddell, who was a novelist and a medieval historian. And since Heaney, we've had studying with us someone like Sinead Morrissey, contemporary poet. So we have this great association with writers at Queen's. We're really proud of that tradition. I've only selected 5 images here, but I'm really spoiled for choice. I could have chosen so many. Leontia Flynn, poet, award-winning, internationally recognized poet. Glenn Patterson, novelist, screenwriter, again, internationally recognized. They're here too in photographs, but they're only 2 of many colleagues that I have in creative writing. So we've got our literature, we've got our creative writing, and then our third component within English is language and linguistics. So not all universities incorporate all 3 domains under English. So we do. Sometimes we talk about English studies at Queen's, and that's really just to represent how there are these very important 3 strands. So language and linguistics, well, if you're someone from Northern Ireland, you won't have really it's unlikely that you've had the chance to study language and linguistics at A-level, because our local examining body, SIA, don't actually offer an A-level. If you're from a GB or indeed Republic of Ireland or elsewhere, you might have studied language at a more advanced level than the equivalent of GCSE. But even so, I think maybe, university study of language is a little bit different. It's quite hard for me to encapsulate in a few words what that is, because again, there's actually a lot of variety, and the images here represent just some of the things that my colleagues in language do. I might say at this point that I'm on the literature team. So I'm one of 19 members of staff that teach literature. So we have smaller cohort for language, but it's a very important cohort nonetheless. And my colleagues who work on English language and linguistics do a range of different things. One colleague, for example, researches the language around dementia, and that's why I have one of those images there, both in terms of what happens to language use in those who suffer from dementia, and also how carers for dementia patients might use language and speak most effectively to them. Another colleague is interested in the domain of phonetics. So she's looking at the production of speech, and therefore we've got that image of the throat and the larynx. And I think both that and another image in this slide shows how sometimes language can be going in a direction which is science-facing rather than humanities-facing. Now, my colleague who works in phonetics, a lot of the students who work with her go on and do further study another year and become speech therapists. So there's a lot of different possibilities in English to go in very different directions. And I have another colleague who's very interested in issues of power, language and power, language in the media, and so on. So hopefully my saying some of those things gives you a sense of what these images are representing. The other one is someone who works on grammar and syntax. So we've got that kind of tabular form to represent what he does. So that gives you kind of a snapshot by how we have these 3 main strands, and I wanted to get that across first, because you might think coming doing English, you know what it's about, because it's a subject which you've studied at school. It's compulsory, but actually English at university will feel a little bit different. It will feel more varied, and there's a very wide choice even from the very beginning. You'll come to us and you'll definitely do literary studies in English. You'll do a little bit of all these things in first year, but you can then choose among the 3 domains. So my next slide shows the module map, and this is really at the beating heart of what we do. We create one of these module maps each year, although a lot of our modules stay the same year on year, but there will sometimes be some small changes. And it maybe looks a bit confusing and messy, but hopefully it makes some sense. I'll use my pointer here perhaps to help you see the different years. So we've got 3 years, which we sometimes call stage 1 in case people study part-time. So you might be doing things a little bit more slowly. So we've got our 6 modules in English at stage 1. We've got a wider number at stage 2, and then a yet wider number at stage 3. It's yet wider because these long bars here are equivalent to 2 modules. So we're looking at effectively 6 modules there in those bands. The reason why I've given you this module map at a glance, don't worry too much about the detail at the moment. I can appreciate the font is very tiny, but I give you this because it's color-coded. And the color-coded is showing you how we have these 3 domains. The purplish color are our literary studies modules, the peachy type color are our language modules, and the green color are representing our creative writing modules. So you can see at a glance there that our literary studies modules dominate numerically, and that represents our staff numbers as well. So we have big staff numbers in our literature cohort, but we have a significant presence also in language and linguistics, 1 here in first year to give you a taster, and then half of your degree in second year could be these 3, because you take 6 modules in any 1 year. And then when you come into your final year, if you wished, you could take all of your modules in language, because we've got this double module and then these 4 as well. So that would make up your 6, or indeed you might want to pick up our creative writing modules. And again, creative writing, these 2 modules are supplemented with this double one. So you can see that you could have a degree program that would have all 3 colors, or after the first year, where we give you a taster of all these 3 things, you might choose to specialize. So the next slide actually does give you a little bit more of the detail close up. As I say, when you come to Queen's, you're studying 6 modules in any 1 year. You're doing 3 simultaneously if you're a full-time student. So our semester 1 is really our teaching term from September through to the end of December. So this line is like the Christmas break. And then in semester 2, you're picking up in January again, and you're studying through to May, a further 3 modules. And if you came to us as a student of English single honours, or English with creative writing, or English with linguistics, you come and you would do these 6 modules. You could put a different module in if you wished, because Queen's builds in a little bit of flexibility. So you can always take an elective, what we call an elective module, outside your home discipline. So if you'd always really enjoyed music and had been a bit undecided about whether you do English or music at university, you could come to us and put in a music module in one of these 2 modules here, for example. So that's very detailed, and you don't at the moment need to know that kind of detail. But if you come to us, we'd help and we'd support you through making those kinds of decisions. And the key thing now is that there is flexibility. So I'm going to go on quite quickly over the next 2 years. Our second year, you can see we've got a bigger choice. So if you were only staying within English and you were choosing 3, you can see you choose 3 from a list of 9 here. So the choice is expanding. It's important for us that you do a core year with us where we have a kind of shared experience. It allows you to get to know all of us staff members. We're over 30 staff, about 35 staff. Permanent full-time members of staff. So you get to know us in first year, and you get to know each other, and you get to know the discipline, and you can then make better choices in second and third year because you've had a little bit of exposure in first year. You'll have studied English at school, but we're doing a much bigger range, a much broader range, not just in terms of literary studies, creative writing and language, but also in terms of literary studies itself, in terms of historical range. So you'll get a chance in first year to dip your toes in all of those things and then make your choices. And all of these are free choices, so there are no cores after first year. And same with third year. Now, if I was going to drill down in the detail here a little bit, and it's probably something I'll come back to, you'll see that the modules, just in terms of their titles, I could just pick out a few. They vary in historical range. I've mentioned this before. So if I put my cursor over this one, Marvels, Monsters and Miracles in Anglo-Saxon England, that's taught by my colleague Marilena, who is a great enthusiast for all things Old English. And this is the earliest writings in English. So some of what you're doing there is actually translating, because there's quite a gap between English as it was spoken and written in the 9th century and how it's now written and spoken in the 21st century. Marilena is a very popular teacher, and she has a loyal cohort of people doing and working on Old English. So maybe it doesn't sound like something you'd be interested in, but you should come to us with an open mind, because you might be surprised. So we have Marilena teaching that at one end of the spectrum. And then if I go to the other, I might just single out Andrew's module, Contemporary American Crime Fiction, which is something that he actively researches and works on and then teaches. So you'll be looking at a lot of detective crime fiction and also some film too, as relevant to that. Okay, so I'm not going to go on too much about different possibilities here, but you could have a quick look and see if there's something that appeals, but also, as I say, be aware that you might come to have enthusiasms that you know at the moment that you don't know yet. So I was talking about taking 6 modules a year, and also talking about if you were an English student, a single honours English student, and you might choose to be an English with creative writing student or an English with linguistics. And you can see those 2 titles at the bottom of the list here. And we think about those degrees as being housed within English, because obviously creative writing and linguistics are part of English. But a number of you might also be interested in joints. So I wanted to say something about joint degrees as well. The list here gives the full cohort of possibilities, all these different joints. Some of these subjects are taught in our own school, arts, English and languages, and some are taught elsewhere in our faculty. You don't have to worry too much about that. So if you wanted to do 2 subjects, that would be absolutely fine. And it just means you're doing less of each subject. So it's very mathematical. So if you're doing 6 modules a year, which you'll be doing if you're a full-time student, you'll take 3 in one subject and 3 in the other, just as in this little pie image here. If you're taking a subject that's in our school, like English and film, English and French, English and Irish, English and Spanish, they're all housed within our school. Drama and English, sorry, I should also have said. Then you could take it as a major minor, where you'll do 4 modules in one and 2 in the other. So again, flexibility would be the key thing I'd want to flag up here, that there is a lot of flexibility. You could come to us and change slightly and tinker around the edges when you're here. That happens quite, not a lot, but quite consistently. Some students find that they're drawn to one subject more than the other, or they might be doing better in one subject compared to the other, and they might want to switch. And that's quite possible. The last thing in this slide I'm drawing your attention to, again on this theme of flexibility, is about elective modules. And I mentioned those just quickly before, that in any one year, you could take a module completely outside of your home subject or subjects and take something else from the faculty. So you could be a single honours English student and take a music module or a politics module, or you could be an English and politics joint student and you could take one music module, just subject to availability and so on. But it would slight cap sometimes, but very rarely. Mostly students can get onto modules that they're interested in. Now, having said that, I'm here to talk about English, so I'm not going to talk too much about joints, because I also want to speak to you about how doing just English, and I'll put up my scare quotes, doing just English won't feel like that, because within the study of English, you'll find that you're doing a lot of other things at the same time. Again, I think this is where English at university differs a lot from English at secondary level, where the distinctions between different subjects is quite clear cut. And you will learn a lot about other things beyond English. You will learn a lot about history. You will learn about politics. You will, be dealing with theoretical and philosophical concepts. Some of you that do joints will be drawn maybe to these kind of particular approaches. Some of you will be single honours English students, and you'll see that actually English does open up into the domain of lots of other subjects as well. We have what we would call an infinite subject. There is no end. You will never say, I've done it all in terms of English. I've read everything there is to be read. I've written everything that can be said or thought about this work. It is infinite. So there will be just, structures of modules and semesters and assessments. So that brings an end to our studies, but the study never ends really, including for myself. So I'm looking forward to having you come into Queen's and learning from you. So study isn't something that we think of as only within English. It kind of spirals into lots of different ways, and you have so much choice about what direction it goes in. You'll have a lot of choice in any one module as to whether you want to focus on questions of form, so really it just feels like you're only doing English, or whether you're interested in historical context, or whether you're interested in the look of a book or the illustrations that accompany books and so on. That's appropriate and relevant to your readings. So again, there's a lot of free choice, even in those core modules, therefore, in first year, where there are certain modules that we say you must take these modules in first year. There's a huge amount of choice. You'll be able to choose which texts in particular you focus on for your assessment. You'll be able to choose the kind of approach you want to take to that text. So there is a lot of flexibility and a lot of free choice. So the entry criteria for next year's entrance admission, so this would be for the academic year 2021-22, we have the entry requirements of ABB for single honours English, and for most of our joints, with the exception of just 3 joints, which are BBB, Drama and English, English and Sociology, and English and Film Studies. I wouldn't get hung up about what these might mean. The entry requirements are really driven by supply and demand, the number of students that are applying to us, the number of students we can accommodate. But there are those possibilities. If I was meeting you in person, I'd probably say if you really want to come to us, and lots of people do, and you're slightly worried about getting the ABB, the strategic thing to do might be to apply for a joint, because when you're with us and you're doing well, as I'm sure you would be, it's probably, it would be the case that you could change. You could come into single honours English. So it might be a little bit of a safety net for you and a bit of a strategy. Because when I meet as a recruitment officer, I meet people out and about. I meet many people who are very keen to come and study with us, which is great. And I want to help you get here. And that's a little tip. So why study English at Queen's? I'm still thinking about that. So you will be taught by experts in your field. So all of us staff members are very active researchers. Teaching is part of what we do. All through the summer months and during the Christmas and Easter breaks from teaching, we make great progress with our research and our own writing. And that means that we're completely on top of sort of cutting edge discussions and how the field is constantly changing. Our approaches, the authors we read, the things we write, it's constantly changing and evolving. I've been here since 1999, as I told you, but I'm not entirely typical. So we have a diverse staff from around the world. So you can probably tell from my accent that I'm reasonably local, born and brought up in Northern Ireland myself, returned here after working away from Ireland, returned to Queen's, very happy to come back to Ireland. But we have an international staff here as well, and we have a great spectrum of ages as well. That's really important in a good, diverse English department. You really want your English department to be as diverse as you all are as students coming to us with lots of different interests and enthusiasms. So it's really important that we're all active researchers, because then that informs our teaching. So our teaching is, constantly changing. We're always changing and tinkering with our modules and texts and so on, because we're also intervening in those kind of contemporary debates about our subject English as well. And you'll see, therefore, we have leaders in a whole range of literary and linguistic study, and also creative writers. It's my creative writers that I've given the images to on this slide. So I've just picked, again, randomly, not all of them, but a cross section of their work, because I've really been stressing diversity. And what I haven't said is that even within creative writing, for example, there's that diversity. So we have writers like Glenn Patterson, who writes fiction and screenplays. He's the author of the BAFTA award-winning film, the script for the BAFTA award-winning film, Good Vibrations. Ashleen Clark is also a screenwriter for film. The Devil's Doorway was an award-winning film out just a couple of years ago. Garrett's book, The Rule of the Land, is non-fictional prose. It's about walking the border because of all the kind of Brexit controversy and debate. It's a very, very highly respected book, and also internationally recognized. So Garrett's been very busy over the last number of years talking about the border. The actors here are representing the work of Jimmy McAlevey, a scriptwriter for theatre, dramatist, I should say. And then finally, Stephen's collection, If All the World and Love Were Young, his poetry collection, again award-winning, inspired. A lot of the poems here inspired by his childhood love of Mario Brothers. So check it out if that intrigues you. So I talked about coming to Queen's at the very beginning and talked about our beautiful buildings. And here in this image, we're now inside our fantastic library. And among those statistics at the very beginning, I said that Queen's is rated in the top 250 in the QS World Rankings of universities. That's over 3,000 universities. But consistently for really since I've been here in 1999, English has been one of the departments within Queen's that makes it into the top 100. They band together numbers 50 to 100, so I can't be more precise than that. But we're in a very, very niche area in terms of 3,000. Another thing I suppose we would also be looking at each year would be the responses of our graduating students, so our final year students who take part in the National Student Survey. And I would each year update the returns on this survey. And so from this year's survey, which we released just a couple of months ago, we have 91% of our graduating students said that staff are good at explaining things and made the subject interesting. 87% said that the course was intellectually stimulating, and 96% said that the library resources support their learning well. And that's our great library. But I also wanted to give another perspective, and this was the perspective of our external examiners. So every university has a number of external examiners, academics from other institutions who come in to moderate our assessments, and they learn a lot about our teaching because they see exactly what it is we are teaching. They see the curriculum, they also see our students' work, and then they give us verbal and written feedback in June of each year. And I was writing out to incoming students this year in June, and I had all these endorsements ringing in my ears. I'm incredibly proud of the work that my colleagues do. And I mentioned at the very beginning that there's a really strong ethic of care among the staff here, that we really do value teaching. We're all busy researchers, but we do also value teaching. And that's not always something that you see, because some world ranking researchers would rather only research. And I don't get that sense among my colleagues here at Queen's, that we enjoy our teaching and we see our teaching of students a really important part of what we do. So I won't read everything out here, but our external examiners have really commended our feedback. it's partly because we have fantastic systems. We've developed these systems. We've up over the number of years. When I came in 1999, students really just got a mark. They didn't get feedback on all their written work. And now our students get the most detailed feedback. We have a system online in which you upload your work digitally, and we will annotate that work and return it to you digitally as well, and you get very, very close attention to your work. And the important thing about that is that really allows you then to improve and to build on that feedback. So I'm not going to read through these quotations, but I am just going to pick out the final one, which I think I like best of all. And that is one of our examiners said that the submitted work, so this is not meeting any of our students, but based on the work that he or she was reading, that the work communicates the pleasure of reading, and that in essays and in feedback, the enthusiasm of staff and students is evident. So they see this great engagement with our discipline. So we really welcome you to come and study with us if you love reading and writing, and we promise you that we share those enthusiasms with you. Now, some of you might be local, as I mentioned before, and Queen's is very well known and very highly regarded within Northern Ireland. And but I wanted to therefore speak to you maybe in particular and say you could come to Queen's as your local university, but you could also go abroad for a short time. So we have our Erasmus program still running. Okay, there may be a little bit of question mark over that in terms of what might happen once the UK leaves the EU, but we have great contacts with our Erasmus partners, and we're hopeful that that will continue. We have other study abroad possibilities as well. If you want to go further than Europe, we do have international placements in Canada, Australia, America. So we have a Go Global office, and there's a dedicated staff team there to help you think about maybe taking a semester or a year away from your studies in Belfast and studying elsewhere. And your credit that you accumulate there transfers, and it's part of your degree. And I think that students who do this find it to be really life-changing. You know, you get a lot out of it other than just changing an academic institution, the experience of going abroad. Small numbers, relatively small numbers of our students do it, but those who do find it to be really, really rewarding. So I did want to flag that up, because you might be thinking, I'm not so sure about staying in Belfast. It's very close to home. I think I'd rather go further afield. That one compromise might be to come to us, because we're as good as you'll get anywhere else. We have a really quality experience, and stay local, but actually have a bit of experience of going away as well. No, you might not go away at all, which is why I was, saying a minute ago that actually quite small numbers of our students do go away. So just a reminder that English as a language is by no means synonymous with England or even Britain or even Britain and Ireland. So of course we teach British literature. We have strengths in Irish literature, in English, and also American, African and Indian writing too. So there are those global possibilities. So imaginatively, you might go to these places if not traveling abroad. Now, I'm going to spend a little bit of time next in talking about employability, because when I speak to people, it's a question that a lot of people ask, and that's entirely understandable, because you will take out student loans to come and study with us, and you want to think about what you're going to do with your English degree. And if you're not thinking about that, then you might find other people are thinking about or asking you what you're going to do with an English degree. And it's not a new question, what will you do with an English degree? Because I was at the point of deciding where to study and what to study in the mid-1980s. And my careers teacher at my secondary school, when I told him that I wanted to do English, I didn't want to do anything else. I wanted to do single honors English, and I wanted to do English because I loved reading, and it was the subject I loved most of all. And he said to me, Moira, what are you going to do with an English degree? Teach? ? So here I am, many decades later, and I am indeed a teacher, and it is an honourable profession. And a lot of our students who come to us do want to teach, and we will help you in that career, because you can liaise with in all careers, but in this one also we will help you in that you can get some work experience at local schools, and obviously your studies will be feeding directly if you're going to be a secondary school teacher of English. But actually, a surprisingly small number of our graduates go into teaching. It's about 12% of English graduates go into teaching. And that means that a very big number do other things. 88%. So the story of English and employability isn't, it's not like I'm studying law and I'm going to become a lawyer, or I'm studying dentistry and I'm going to become a dentist. If I had a pie chart of destinations for English graduates, it would be very multicolored, because they go in lots of different directions. So I'm going to tell you shortly about some of those different directions that our graduates go in, but this is a more general slide just for now. And I want to prompt you to think about what it is that you're doing when you come and you study English. Yes, you might read Shakespeare. Yes, you might read contemporary American fiction. Yes, you might read playwrights. You might read Oscar Wilde. Yes, this is the content, but the skills that you're acquiring are really key, and they're happening almost invisibly as well. So some of the skills are maybe more obvious than others. I think that you will appreciate that you're practicing your writing skills a lot in English. You're also practicing your oral communication skills a lot in English. You're speaking in tutorial and seminar discussions, and we would hope to build and foster confidence in those domains. Some of you will come brimming with confidence already. Some of you will feel less confident, and we would be hoping that over the 3 years of study with us, you'll become more confident writers and speakers, and also thinkers. And my first point here is about being an independent thinker. English is not about learning things off by heart and then applying them by rote. It's exactly the opposite of that. So we might give you a lecture, but we would be very happy if you disagreed with us. Lectures are often a little bit coy about giving answers. I certainly, as a lecturer, would try not to divulge any kind of personal opinion I have, because I don't want you merely to accept my view on the text. I'm literary studies, so it's texts I do with students. I don't want you to say what I think about the book. I want to hear what you think about the book. So we train you to have the confidence to stand by your own views and to think critically. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't change your mind. Sometimes you hear a lecture, sometimes you read another book and you might change your mind, but it's about you independently weighing up different arguments and adjudicating between them. English, therefore, can be a really challenging subject. I think, sometimes I hear that anecdotally. I've got children at school age, and I hear things that parents say when they go in to talk with teachers. I've heard parents say, oh, there's no right answer in English. You don't quite know if you're doing it right. We will show you really how you build a persuasive argument rather than being in the domain of right or wrong. And all of this is actually training you in really important employable skills. Communication skills are at the heart of a lot of disciplines, but also thinking independently and problem solving. So the next slide shows a range of different graduate destinations. Behind these anonymous names, for example, the person who is commissioning editor in London, Bonnier Zafir, a key crime fiction publisher. The person behind this title studied before Andrew was teaching crime fiction. So she didn't need to take a module in crime fiction to get this particular position. But she did do an English degree, which equipped her to then go in at entry level at publishers, and she's worked her way up to be a senior commissioning editor. So behind all of these destinations are individual students who I could name and show you their photographs. And I think what you'll see from the list of how extraordinarily diverse they are. We've got a speech therapist there who did the phonetics module strand with my colleague Joan, who teaches that domain. But we have a huge range of different kinds of employability. So I'll not spend too long on going through those. I'm just going to pick out one in particular, and that is the person behind this line, the client associate at PricewaterhouseCoopers. PricewaterhouseCoopers, big accountancy firm based in Belfast, national, international firm, but have an important presence in Belfast. And what I like about telling you about Kate is that Kate's a fairly recent graduate. So she went into PricewaterhouseCoopers in September 2018. So she graduated in July, and she went in and started as a client associate with them, and sent us and gave permission for us to use this lovely photograph of her on her graduation day with her parents. But what I like about this slide is that you can also see that Sorka Conlon before her, who graduated in 2015, is also working in PricewaterhouseCoopers, and so is Kira Nelson. Now, Kira graduated in 1996, so much earlier, and she's now director in PricewaterhouseCoopers. There are more than 3 English graduates at PricewaterhouseCoopers. We have a great relationship with them. They come up and host events for our students, lunchtime events, pizza with PwC. So we have good connections. Our career service work with you from first year onwards to help you think about what you will do with your English degree. We have someone dedicated to careers in English. That's Emma Lennox, who herself is a graduate in English and is a great advocate for English as a subject. And she works with our students. Our students can work with careers up to 2 to 3 years after graduating as well. So it's a great support service there as well. We have a work-based module in 3rd year, which is open to all students in our school, but was some of the English staff are involved in that. So you have a placement in your 3rd year. So we're very aware of the concerns about employability with humanities subjects. As I say, it's not like studying veterinary science and you're going to be a vet. So I think that humanities subjects are great subjects to do if you're not sure about what you'll do after graduation. But it keeps things very, very open. And this section of my talk is really just to reassure you that our students do well in graduate destinations, and they do use the skills from their English degree. So I'm going to come into the end of my presentation now. So I just want to say a few things about ways that you could get involved even now. And one of these is our Seamus Heaney Centre. So this is our centre for our creative writing. And they run events during our terms, which are open to all. They're open to students, but they're open to members of the public often. So some are, some not, sorry, I should say. So for example, Write Night, which meets every Tuesday, that would be exclusive to students at Queen's. But some of our events with visiting authors are open to everyone. So you might like to sign up straight away for weekly emails to let you know what's going on. So you don't have to be a student at Queen's to participate and come along in those. At the moment, because of the coronavirus, things are happening online instead. So I've just flagged up 2 current things. Our MA students, our MA creative writing students, have a podcast showcasing their work. And also coming up on the 3rd of September is an interview between Glenn Patterson, director of the Seamus Heaney Centre, and Susanna Dickey. Susanna Dickey is a graduate of ours from English and Queen's, who's just had her first novel, Tennis Lessons, published this year. So Glenn's going to be in conversation with Susanna, and you'd be very welcome to attend. That's an online event. We also have our English Society, which is run by our students. Down the photograph in the bottom left corner is a photograph of our committee. So this is entirely organised by our students, and they run lots of social events. So you can see that last year they ran a board game afternoon down in the student, well, certainly Student Roost is one of the accommodation halls, and they regularly host readings like Poetry and Pints, and the central image is of the formal that they organize every year in the spring of each year, and you can follow them using the social media channels. If you're interested in learning out more about who we are as individuals, you've met me briefly. You may meet others. I've mentioned some in passing, but all of what we do, all of our research, if you want to find out more about our research interests, are available if you just Google us with Pure, because all our activities and publications are listed there. And as I've already suggested, you can also keep in touch with the work of our creative writers through the Seamus Heaney Centre web pages. So that is me finished for now. Thank you very much for listening. And just to repeat who I am, my name is Moira Hazlett, and my email address is here on the slide. If you have any questions or you'd like to know a little bit more, or you weren't certain about something, you're very welcome to make contact with me. And hopefully I might see some of you at some physical on-campus events in the future. Bye.